Hello and welcome back to the UCLA Bruins Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Ferguson, writer for UCLA on SI. Today we're going to be breaking down UCLA's round of 64 victory over UCF, where the Bruins were able to take the win 75-71. We're going to be talking about what went right, what went wrong, kind of things like that throughout this game. But before we get started, I want to thank everyone right now who's listening. Apple Music, Spotify, or even YouTube. It all means a lot to me, and I cannot thank you enough. But without further ado, let's get right into it. So obviously, UCLA entered this game as a favorite. I believe they were in a 5.5 point favorite to win this game. And they played like it. You know, they were able to stretch the lead out for most of the game. I believe they led for 83% of the game. Their largest lead came, I believe, in the second half, where they were up by 14 points. Again, the Bruins know how to play basketball, but, you know, there's always two sides of the coin. UCLA really did struggle to put this game away. Like I said, 14-point lead in the second half, and they were only able to win by 4. It got really choppy at the end. You know, there was a lot of missed shots from UCLA. UCF was taking advantage of every opportunity the Bruins gave them, and this game looked very close against better teams that UCLA will probably have to face. You know, their second round opponent could be UConn. They most likely will have to play UConn. Again, scary matchup, but that will not slide against better teams. Michigan State, maybe in the Sweet 16, if UCLA is able to make it that far. Again, not the best finish for the Bruins, but overall, I thought they did what they could do with the hand they were dealt with, right? Tyler Bilodeau is out. You know, that's going to change a lot of things on how the Bruins offense operates. I didn't think that was affected for that much of the game. Like I said, UCLA had a 14-point lead. They ended the half up 8, and I thought UCLA really could have won this game more if they had Tyler Bilodeau. They were fine without him, but again, they are just not at their ceiling when he is absent. But looking at like what UCF did well against UCLA, you know, again, I thought they were able to take advantage of UCLA's poor shooting on the night. They had 53 rebounds on the night. They had 25 offensive, 28 defensive. Compared to UCLA's 15 offensive and 26 defensive, you start to see an issue kind of develop. On the game, UCF had 53 rebounds. That is simply unacceptable. You know, no team should be able to break 50 rebounding and still lose. But again, that kind of goes back to what UCF kind of did wrong and why the Bruins were able to win. They only shot 38% from the field, and 31% from the free throw line. They went 5 of 16 from the charity stripe. And again, that is a lot of points that, you know, the Knights left out, you know, on the court. That is why ultimately UCLA won this game. You know, if they would have converted on at least 50, you know, this game looks a lot different. And I think UCLA would have been sent home packing. But again, you know, that is just March. Teams are going to play bad. They're going to play good. There's not really a consistency when you kind of look at how each matchup breaks down. But again, UCLA needs to kind of figure out how to stay more consistent. And I think that will be solved, you know, when Tyler Bilodeau is kind of back in rotation and he gets going. Again, shooting wise, I thought the Bruins played terribly. You know, they got the job done, but, you know, they were shooting about 50% in the first half. Around there, you know, maybe 48, you know, they were shooting the ball well. But, you know, the second half came around and they could not hit a shot to save their lives. They ended up finishing the game shooting 48% from the field, 29% from the three-point line. That is something that UCLA has kind of prided themselves on. You know, Sky Clark, Trent Perry, both great three-point shooters. Neither of them really had the best night. Trent Perry went 0 for 4 from the three-point line. And Sky Clark went 1 of 3. So again, we're not seeing UCLA play their kind of brand of basketball. And I think that is simply because Tyler Bilodeau is not playing and kind of opening up the court for the Bruins that much. But again, kind of looking at what UCLA did, you know, 40%, that is not a winning standard against any team. I stressed this before. Better teams are not going to let, you know, 40% shooting slide. You know, if they're going up against UConn, I want to see at least 48%, which I think is obtainable if Tyler Bilodeau is back in the lineup and more shots come from him rather than, you know, Steven Jamerson. You know, players like that. You know, Donovan Dent had a really rough night, and I think that really tanked UCLA's field goal percentage. You know, he shot 4 of 17, 17 shots, only made 4. You can't really argue with that. That is a bad performance from UCLA's marquee player. But again, it's just about moving past this and kind of looking at what they could fix. But overall, again, I thought UCLA got lucky. I think, this performance was not very, telling of what this team is actually capable of. Like I said, their ceiling is much more, stable when Tyler Bilodeau's there. There's a lot to kind of be left to be desired when he's not. But again, overall, not a bad game, but it could have been much worse. And again, I think UCLA kind of got lucky. They won this game by their teeth. But again, it's college basketball, March Madness, things like this happen. But now I'm going to kind of break down, how each player played and kind of, discuss what they did well, what they could do better in the next game. Like I said, they're probably going to be able to play against number 2 seeded UConn. Scary matchup. But again, I felt like there was a lot here that UCLA can build on. For starters, Xavier Booker played a hell of a game. 15 points, 6 of 12 from the field, 2 of 4 from the three-point line. He also had 8 rebounds. I knew that would be huge for Booker if he was able to make his impact felt. He also had 4 blocks, so we're starting to see him kind of be more defensive-minded, and that has allowed UCLA to, again, win a game by such a short margin. If he doesn't get 4 blocks in this one, I think UCLA loses this game outright. When Bilodeau comes back, obviously his role is going to change. He played 26 minutes. I could expect that to get cut in half. But I think this is a game where Mick Cronin looks at and kind of is more comfortable putting Booker in for sustained minutes. Again, I thought he played the game pretty well. I mean, there were some things that he did, like defensive-wise, that I thought he could do better on. But when he heats up, UCLA is in a good spot. I've always kind of thought this when I watch UCLA kind of play against, tougher opponents. But when Xavier Booker hits a three-pointer in the first 10 minutes of the first half, UCLA has a very good chance of winning because, again, that kind of puts teams into panic mode. We saw what he was able to do against Rutgers earlier in the season when he had 24 points, went 10 for 11 from the field. Just things like that. That is why Booker is an invaluable scorer early on in the game. But overall, great game from Booker. I was really pleased with how he played. Up next, Donovan Dent. He played the complete 40 minutes. He's obviously conditioned to do so, especially when, Sky Clark was injured earlier this season. He would only play 40 minutes per game. But the result that we saw kind of tells us otherwise. I think he was a little gassed, 10 points, 4 of 17. I mentioned that earlier, being a no-no for the Bruins. It really looked like he was just taking bad shots, forcing shots, not really being aware of where he was on the court. And that eventually kind of allowed him to shoot this bad. Moving forward, I think when Bilodeau's there, he's not going to have to force shots. I felt like he had to play hero ball in this one when he really didn't have to. Because again, there were other Bruins who were willing to pick up the slack and do it much more efficiently, and Donovan Dent was not that guy. He also had 5 rebounds though, so again, huge numbers from Donovan Dent. That's what you want to see from your guards, especially when your number 2 rebounder Bilodeau is out. I think filling that gap in or closing that margin is something that the Bruins really were asking for from UCLA's guards. He had 5 assists, a little bit lower than what he is kind of used to. I mean, we've seen him get 15 at times. Things like that. He has done a very good job of doing. Another 0 turnover game. So again, Donovan Dent is still finding, good ball security down the stretch. And that, again, is a winning formula for the Bruins. But what I really want to highlight from Donovan Dent's game was his 6 steals. This was honestly, the deal breaker in UCLA winning this game. As a team, UCLA had 13 steals to just 8 turnovers. So again, great, margin of, ball security there. On the other side, UCF had 17 turnovers. And again, it's a miracle that UCLA it was a miracle that they only lost by 4 points because that is a lot of turnover. 17. I can't even fathom what Mick Cronin would say about UCLA if they had a game that bad. But again, I loved how UCLA's defense played, and the heart of that was Donovan Dent. I loved how aggressive he was, poking every single ball that he could. On ball defense for him, it can be a little rough. I mean, we've saw a couple of defensive breakdowns, but off ball, Donovan Dent is absolutely elite. And I love that about his game. Up next, Sky Clark. He played 20 minutes. He also lost a tooth. Again, I think he's playing a lot more scrappier, and that's what we need from Sky Clark, that defensive guy who's going to go in and give his all. But offensively, not that good. He was UCLA's, second leading scorer for most of the season. He's kind of dropped down since. He had 8 points, 3 of 5 from the field, 1 of 3 from the three-point line, had 1 rebound, 2 assists. His 3 turnovers were a little bit concerning, to say the least. I mean, he just needs to play his own game, and I think he will be fine. But moving forward, we definitely need to see a lot more from Clark's offensively. That is what his game is really around, and we just simply did not see that. On the other side, Trent Perry, his kind of backup guy for Sky Clark, has kind of jumped him in the lineup. He played a very good game. I thought 15 points, 4 of 12 from the field. Not the best numbers, obviously, but still, he was able to make the shots when it mattered. For when, UCF was able to kind of close the lead on UCLA, Perry would show up, make 3 quick baskets, and then ultimately UCLA was able to hang on to that. But again, his ability to be clutch, make the shots that matter, really, helped UCLA. His 7 of 10 from the free throw line, that was a little sketchy. I mean, we know he is probably one of UCLA's best free throw shooters, but still, when he was missing those kind of later in the game, it was, it kind of got us a little scared. We know obviously it's a new environment for him. It's probably a hostile environment because we know UCLA fans are not going to travel all the way to Philadelphia. And these were really high pressure free throws. So again, I'm not too concerned. I think now that he's kind of filled in that role and kind of knows what to expect, I think he'll be better moving forward. He also had 5 rebounds. Again, just shows that UCLA's guards are capable of filling in for Tyler Bilodeau when, that rebounding anchor is not really there. But not the best game from him, but overall he played a decent game. I really can't complain. I just want to see him shoot a little bit better because, he is one of UCLA's most efficient scorers when he's hot. The last starter I really want to talk about is Eric Daly Jr. What a game from him. I thought, this was UCLA's game plan all along. Tease Tyler Bilodeau coming back into this game, put Eric Daly Jr. in and just let him tear things up. I believe he had like 8 shot attempts in the first, 5 minutes of the game. To finish the game, he had 20 points, he went 8 of 17 from the field, 2 of 6 from the 3-point line. That was, a pleasant surprise. He also had 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 0 turnovers, and he also had 2 steals and 2 blocks. Just an overall great game from Eric Daly Jr. We did see him cool down, throughout the game, but again, he was the guy who allowed UCLA to get ahead early and fast and, kind of close that deficit at the beginning of the game. To kind of like talk about the beginning of the game, UCF was up 8-0 at one point, but that's when Eric Daly Jr. really turned things on, and he played a very good game. Now kind of looking at the bench, I mean, there was not really any notable, performances that I saw. Steven Jamerson played 12 minutes, 2 points. He had 4 rebounds. Good game from him. I want to see more of Steven Jamerson. I think he is a very good piece for UCLA. He also had 2 steals. Again, just adding to, UCLA's steal total. Do I think it's sustainable? I think when Bilodeau comes back, I'm not too sure if we'll see that much Steven Jamerson. I think, when Bilodeau goes out, that's when Xavier Booker will come in and kind of take those minutes away from him. Jamar Brown, he went in for 8 minutes. He scored 1 3-pointer, 1 rebound, 1 assist. Pretty, typical, bench player game. Nothing too crazy, but he did exactly what he was needed to do. He also helped UCLA kind of get out of that slump, kind of similarly to how Trent Perry was able to do so later in the game. Brandon Williams, 10 minutes, 0 points, 4 rebounds. That is kind of what Brandon Williams does. He is that physical guy in the paint. He's going to get you a handful of rebounds. 10 minutes, 4 rebounds. That's a pretty good stat line. I liked how he played. Will we see more of him? I'm not too sure. Same thing with, Jamerson. I think a lot of his minutes are going to go to Bilodeau. Again, UCLA was down a player, so they are going to expend some of their bench players a lot more. Eric Freeney, not a bad game. I thought we were going to see a little bit more from him. He played 15 minutes, so the most of, UCLA's bench rotation. But he didn't really give us anything to look back on and kind of smile about. 0 points, 0 of 2 from the field. He had 2 rebounds, 1 assist. He had 1 steal, which came at a very good time. Again, I think, his ability to make a difference on defense has kind of made him, a prevalent piece for UCLA. But that's all I kind of have for the players. We kind of talked about what they did right and what they did wrong. But again, I want to see these players build on it, especially, Xavier Booker. Sky Clark can do a little bit better. Just things like that. Not a bad game from the Bruins starters. The bench, I would like to see a little bit more scoring. Only 5 points came from UCLA's bench. And that's where, the good teams will beat UCLA is, off of bench production. But again, I'm not too scared. UCLA has that iron five, those 5 players who are used to playing extended minutes and are comfortable doing so. But up next, UCLA will probably have to play against UConn. It's either that or number 15 seeded Fordham. I expect UConn to win this game, no questions asked. But if one thing for sure that UCLA cannot, do against UConn is, this inconsistency on offense. They need to figure out how to kind of break that streak. And what has worked for UCLA is kind of turning to the bench to, get those, easy layups, 3-pointers, things like that. That helps UCLA remain more consistent. But besides that, I think UCLA should be able to beat UConn. I know I'm not too confident now after watching this one, but if UCLA can kind of fix some of these issues, stay more consistent, play a clean game defensively, I want to see them get 10 plus steals. I think UCLA should be in a position to win that game. But that's all I really have today. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Again, I'm your host, Andrew Ferguson, and as always, 4 is up and have a good day.